Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cooper, and today I'm talking about the power of voice in modern literature and music to uncover the distinct personality and emotion that a text constructs. The big question I'll be answering is, how do Steinbeck and Sam Cooke use language features to represent similar voices of marginalization, but with alternative outcomes of despair and hope? Alright, let's get into it. So to start off, we need to look at the thesis. Both Steinbeck and Cooke utilize language features to construct a similar voice of the marginalized African American. However, Steinbeck ultimately conveys a voice of despair and retraction due to isolation, while Cooke presents a wistful and hopeful voice for civil rights. So let's be more specific about what voices we are mentioning. Of Mice and Men represents an African American voice that transitions from faithfulness in the American dream to despair of the dream due to marginalization and isolationism. In the Great Depression America social hierarchy. On the other hand, A Change Gonna Come represents a wistful voice that manifests racial equality between African Americans and white Anglo-Saxon Protestants during the 1960s civil rights movement, despite continued racism. To get why these voices matter, we need to look to as when and where these texts came from. Of Mice and Men is a novella by John Steinbeck that describes the odyssey of two itinerant workers, George and Lenny, who encounter various individuals at the ranch they work at. Here, they come across a subjugated character called Crooks, who is labeled as a stable bug and is heavily marginalized on the farm. Moreover, A Change Gonna Come is a deep soul song by Sam Cooke that manifested change in the American societal hierarchy. It narrates the past struggles of African Americans but insists that a new future is on the horizon. Despite its seemingly vast positives that the African Americans are receiving, it references the continued racism they face. Context isn't always important when analyzing or discussing any text to get a deeper and more structured understanding of characters and issues. These two texts, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck and A Change Gonna Come by Sam Cooke, are set almost 30 years apart. Of Mice and Men is set in 1937 during the zenith of the Great Depression and the Jim Crow era. It was a time of severe poverty and racial segregation faced by mostly working-class Americans. It involved significant events such as the Dust Bowl, Scottsboro case, and the Jim Crow laws. Fast forward to 1964 to Sam Cooke's beautiful piece of lyrical soul, A Change Gonna Come, was produced during the Civil Rights Movement, a zeitgeist of protest, unity, and progressive government action. This was fueled by the March on Washington, the Civil Rights Act, and the African American right to vote. Now going on towards our first analysis, in Of Mice and Men, Crooks confronts Lenny's presence as Lenny is standing in the doorway of Crook's room. Here Crooks says, "I ain't wanted in the bunkhouse, and you ain't wanted in my room." You can really hear the bitterness and power in that line. So basically, the juxtaposition of the toleration of racial territory between African Americans and white Americans can be seen with the phrase, "I ain't wanted and you ain't wanted." This evaluation of where the two main demographics on the ranch can/can't go emphasizes the mutual exclusion of certain individuals on the ranch. Technically, Crooks ensures the idea that even though he is excluded from the white spaces, he maintains control over his own area at the ranch. Furthermore, the text characterizes Lenny as having an anonymous mental impairment, and with the same phrase, Cooke draws a parallel between his and Lenny's exclusion. Essentially, this means that different forms of marginalization can occur within the same societal hierarchy. Towards the end of the song, A Change Gonna Come, Cooke sings the lyric, "And I go downtown and somebody telling me don't hang around." The metonymy of downtown symbolizes the presence of social interaction and integration around Cooke's personal setting. In turn, the lyric "don't hang around" signifies exclusion under the Jim Crow laws. The alliteration of the D sound in downtown and don't creates a direct tone that brings light into the deeper meaning of the lyric, being racial discrimination. Essentially, the diction of this lyric showcases the presence of racism in America, despite changing social standards. Basically, the issue of racism is represented in these texts similarly due to the use of diction and symbolism to display the effects of social exclusion during each text epoch. They both convey or indirectly reference experience of racism, which have shaped their text identity as calling out the carelessness of racial acts during the time period. Now moving on to our second analysis, Of Mice and Men uses vernacular language and conditional language to construct Cooke's voice as a hesitant-like hopefulness within an oppressive social hierarchy of the Great Depression. When Cooke says, "If you guys would want a hand to work for nothing, just as keep, why I come and lend a hand, I ain't so crippled, I can't work like a son of a B-word if I want to." The usage of informal diction such as guys, ain't, and son of a B-word reflects his working class identity, aligning him with the sub-dialect of American itinerant laborers who pursued the American dream. However, the conditional language of "if you would want" reveals Cooke's underlying uncertainty as he imagines being included rather than asserting it. Similarly, in Sam Cooke's A Change Gonna Come, the repetition of the lyric, "A change gonna come, oh yes it will," conveys a wistful and persistent hope for racial equality during the civil rights era. This rhetorical repetition mirrors Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" motif, connecting both ideas to a shared African American voice that longs for equality. The repetition evokes both yearning and determination, symbolizing their refusal to accept the ongoing oppression. Ultimately, both texts employ language features, vernacular language, and repetition to express a similar voice of faithfulness in the face of racial adversity. While Crook's optimism is restricted by the 1930s social hierarchies, Cooke's tone captures the collective perseverance of African Americans who believed that unity could finally bring about change. Now, moving on to our third and final analysis, regretful tone is connoted through Crook's dialogue in Of Mice and Men, as Crooks retracts his earlier hope of companionship and inclusion. When Crook states, "Remember what I said about hoeing and doing odd jobs? Well, just forget it. I didn't mean it. Just fooling. I wouldn't want to go to no place like that." The repeated use of colloquial diction such as "member, bout, just," and "fooling" reinforces his position within the working class, racially marginalized community of 1930s America. This informal dialect reminds readers that despite Crook's brief aspiration to rise above his social situation, he remains confined by systematic racial boundaries. Steinbeck's use of syntax and fragmented speech through the ... and apostrophes that follow every informal word mirrors Cook's emotional withdrawal, highlighting his internal conflict between longing for connection and fearing rejection. The negotiation-style dialogue between Crooks and Candy, "Just forget it," and "I didn't mean it, I wouldn't want to go." This further reveals how Crook's fleeting hope in the American dream collapses into self-denial, symbolizing the unfulfilled aspirations of African Americans during this era. Likewise, in Sam Cooke's A Change Gonna Come, the alternating grammatical tense in the lyric, "It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come, oh yes it will," evoke feelings of remembrance and anticipation. The past tense phrase, "been a long time coming," recalls generations of racial struggle, while the shift to the present tense, "a change gonna come," signifies hope and renewal despite the oppression. The transition embodies a collective tolerance of African Americans, transforming sorrow into faith. Comparatively, both Crook's retraction and Cooke's lyric express a shared emotional movement from yearning to realism and from despair to hope. Through tone, diction, and tense, both texts illustrate the evoking African American voice, one a trap between their awareness of exclusion and the other enduring belief that change all along remains possible. So in the end, both Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men and Cooke's A Change Gonna Come effectively construct voices of African American marginalization, yet their outcomes diverge between despair and hope. Of Mice and Men captures a voice confined by the social and racial barriers of the Great Depression, using vernacular and conditional language and regretful tone to showcase Cooke's internal battle between wanting connection and accepting exclusion. On the other hand, Cooke transforms a similar struggle to embody hope for racial equality during the Civil Rights era. Throughout these texts, language features have become a way of translating how emotions and identities are expressed. These voices show us the same truth, that despite different eras and ways of portraying narratives, the pursuit of racial equality and belonging remains central in the African American experience. Collectively, Steinbeck and Cooke demonstrate how the representation of voice can simultaneously reflect suffering and inspire change. This reminds the everyday reader that literature and music go beyond storytelling by acting as a vessel to echo real human struggle and perseverance. So that's it, guys. That is an analysis of Mice and Men and Sam Cooke's A Change Gonna Come. I really hope you enjoyed this and now understand not only the analysis between these two texts and the voices they represent, but the deeper contextual background of both texts and what a significant period of change that was in American history, especially for African Americans. All right, y'all. Have a good night and stay safe.